Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Health Oddity podcast. Now we've got a very special episode today because it is, I don't want to use the word just because then that kind of underplays what we're doing. It is just, but I will say it is the three of us today. Okay. We have we've taken the opportunity to have a podcast, to record one where we kind of take a little bit of time to reflect back over recent episodes and to answer some questions and to also kind of discuss things that have been on our mind recently and things that we may have dealt with our clients, with our students, with our members recently that we feel may be of use to you. So before we get into that, I will say, as always, welcome to the usual hosts, Mr. Peter Lant in Bath. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Just the three of us, you and I and him. So yeah, there we go. That's the that was the follow-up to the Bill Withers song, wasn't it?
You and I and him.
And how are you, Mr. Paul Bassett in London? How are you doing, mate?
I'm fine. I'm good. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Okay.
Keep convincing yourself of that. It's all
I know.
right.
Positive affirmations.
Good. So since we had our last podcast where it was just the three of us, we've had some absolutely fantastic guests on. We really have. We always say every week we've got this amazing run of guests, but just to refresh your memory, if you haven't been listening to every episode sequentially, first of all, shame on you. Go back and listen to some of the other ones because we've got many people listening from the start who are just catching up actually now. Including Mr. Graham Harris, I think, who I'll give a little shout out to, who messaged me in the week and said he really enjoyed the Dave Whitley Iron Tamer podcast. So recently we had Jim Hatcher all the way from Chicago. We had Mark Rifkind, from, I think, San Jose in California. We had Mr. Chris Zaremba on with his Fat to Fit over 50 from, I think he was near Reading, wasn't he? He was just outside London somewhere. Dave Whitley we've had on from Nashville, who was fantastic. Brett Jones from Pittsburgh and Chris Denning from Ottawa in Canada. So we've really been kind of moving around, speaking to lots of great people. And one of the questions we had, actually, Jim Hatcher posed a question for us, which I think we're going to use for upcoming guests as well, which was, how do you guys and future guests go about practicing what we preach when there's always new information coming out? There's always new training protocols. There's always new opinions. There's new studies, new information coming to light. So how do we practice what we preach was a question from Jim Hatcher. So we'll kind of kick off by kind of having a little discussion around that, I think, and see where it takes us. So, Mr. Peter Lamb, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think about this a lot because obviously, and I put this out a lot on social media and stuff about just doing what you said you would do. So, if you do what you said, if you say you're going to do something and then you go and do it, you're pretty much ahead of most people. Because a lot of people talk about what they're going to do, and for various reasons, time, whatever, commitments, kids to look after, all of that, they end up not doing the things that they say they're going to do. So you either don't bother saying you're going to do them, or if you say you're going to do it, you have a plan to do it. And that's where most people lack, is having a plan, I think. And I know this because I used to be exactly that person. Because when I was working long hours, office job, leaving the house at 6:45 in the morning, getting back at 7 in the evening. And I'd be like full of like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get fit and I'm going to get strong and I'm going to do this. And then I'd be just wiped out at the end of the day. And I also, we've talked about this before, drank a lot, smoked a lot, stuff like that. And it was a bit of a party lifestyle. So I was just forever making empty promises. And then and then the decision to stop doing that was when everything changed. And that was like, right, I need this. Otherwise, like I'm just gonna carry on the way I'm going and never get what I want. So it's a kind of realization. And I think most people do this. You might call it a midlife crisis. You might call it whatever you want, but I call it kind of waking up a little bit and just stop being a child, basically, which is, which is what I do. Because, kids do that as well, don't they? They make a lot of promises and say they're going to do things and then don't, or fall asleep or whatever. And that was basically me. So, and I've had a lot of coaches.
What was it, do you think? I was just gonna ask you, Pete, what was it, do you think, having had, probably years worth of saying you were going to do something about it and not, what was it that was the catalyst to actually do something and actually take some action? What was different that time when you said it and you actually did it?
I got made redundant. So I had a very well paid job, so I had a nice car, nice house, and all of that. And then I got made redundant, and it was kind of like a bit of a wake up because it gave me time to think. Because it's one of those things. It's like I was unhappy at work, and I was like, how do I get to do something else? But I didn't have time to think about it because I was constantly at work or tired. So then when I got made redundant, I was like, right, I can make a decision now. And I made a decision to become a trainer, which then doesn't pay very well in the beginning, as we all know. You've got to try and make a client base and all that. It's totally, and when was this? 2014. How old was I in 2014? 37. It's probably 30, 36, 37 years old. I can't remember how old I was anyway. It was a while ago. And that's to do a new career decision, a new life at that point is really hard. So that was when I was like, I started to realize I'm going to have to start showing up. I'm going to have to start doing exactly. I don't get paid for just being there. I have to do the work. So that was when I started getting different coaches and what have you to help me out with mindset and help me out with business and help me out with how to train people. Because you do the PT course and that's just the beginning, and then all of a sudden you're like, actually, I know nothing. Which will also go along later on, probably with what Jim said of like, how do you keep up to date with stuff? And it's like you just keep going away and learning stuff, keeping the things that you think are relevant and getting rid of the stuff that's not relevant anymore and bringing in stuff that is relevant. And then it's like Dan John with his movement matrix thing that he's got. Is it a movement matrix? Whatever he calls it.
Yeah.
That he gets, he's got everything in there and he can justify. But if something else comes along and he's like, right, well, instead of wedging it in, actually that can replace that. And it still keeps minimalist. It still keeps working, but it's just been made better. So,
it's almost what Brett Jones was talking about a couple of weeks back when he was saying about, he doesn't want to keep adding things to what he's doing. He's got his, got his kettlebells, he's got his body weight, he's got his basic barbell lifts and his Indian clubs for the kind of the mobility and the kind of regeneration, rejuvenation, that sort of thing. So he's actually stopped looking for new, different, shiny things. He's kind of very happy where he is with his kind of almost minimal training regime without keep adding.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So, Paul, how do you find this works for you in reality or how has it started to work for you, in your life?
So just to be specific about the question. So the question is that, do we practice what we preach?
Yes. Or I think one of the questions was, do you? And then I suppose, how do you, with all of the, increasing inputs, the ever kind of, ever more options, ever more, gizmos and gadgets and training philosophies and things. How do you kind of keep yourself centered and practice what you preach and keep moving forward?
Well, isn't there the old Dan John quote? The goal is to keep the goal the goal.
That is the old Dan John quote. Yeah.
I think that's it. I mean, I've got probably a strong reason why I'm doing it. So practice what I preach. I mean, the whole reason I'm in this industry is because I did that. But it's quite easy to have shiny syndrome, object syndrome, isn't it? And particularly that was probably characterized the early part of my kind of journey, which was just being exposed to everything and just let everything sit. And because I didn't come through a particular discipline, it's not like I was, 18 and became a weightlifter, or 18 and I did a specific sport or whatever. And I did that for years and years and years. And and anything I did around that kind of funneled into that discipline. So really, once I'd made the decision that I want to get healthy, I literally just explored everything, and each bit would jump me to another thing. And eventually it was that kind of conglomeration of all that information that made me make the decision to become a trainer. But ever since then, it's just about for me, it's about having specific goals. So I'm always pretty driven around that. And practicing, in terms of practicing what I preach, I mean, it depends on where I am in my life. I mean, I like to think that I probably am prepared to do some of the things that most people don't enjoy doing. I quite happily do finger mobility and, wrist mobility and
do this thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's I've always, I think I've always, because fitness has always been slightly uncomfortable in some ways, because I've either had to deal with joint injuries or weakness or whatever. So it's never been easy. So it's kind of accept that it won't be easy. And therefore I don't get really phased when it's difficult. But I think at times I've struggled to find the right tool for the job. And that's why eventually I spoke to Paul about getting coached. And because that does really help, because, again, it comes back to the goal. What was my goal at the time was just to get stronger. And so I reached out to someone who knew what they were talking about, because I was, to a degree, a bit overwhelmed by the amount of choices. Because I have explored so many different areas, and I'm quite glad I did, because it does mean that I have this big toolbox which I can apply to all the different people I work with. I've had phases where I've just done bodyweight training. I've had phases where I've done mainly endurance. I've had phases where I say phase, I'm still in this phase of kettlebells exclusively, stuff where I've just done barbells exclusively, and just explored those modalities really. But now I'm definitely in a phase where I'm really, really focusing on a very specific kind of goals, and everything's geared around that. And because I've got quite a strong sense of why I'm doing it, then everything else has to kind of fall into place in order for me to do that. I think Chris Denning spoke on the last podcast about, if you start increasing your training, then you kind of got to get everything else in order. You've got to be better at managing your time. You've got to assess how much time you're spending with your family and make sure it's quality. And you've got to make sure that your meetings finish on time, and you've got to prioritize things. So in terms of that, yeah, definitely practice what I preach. Do I eat according to a perfect diet? No. I mean, I have moments when I'm very, very focused. Like last year, I was very focused. I was working with Chris Lowe, and did a lot of work there. And a lot of that for me was education as well, around eating for performance. I have no inclination to do any kind of, low body fat percentage physical transformation thing, because I don't have the time. And I suppose that's a decision about practicing what I preach. I've got to make the decision that I can't do everything that I would have been able to do when I was 25, where I didn't have any responsibilities. I could probably train really hard, work crazy hours, and have a very focused diet when I didn't have any responsibility, but now I do. So
I think one of the sayings that I use a lot for my members, which kind of sums up, I think, where we're going, is, you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people, not yourself, but people sometimes, they try and take on too much, don't they? And they're not realistic with the amount of time they've got. Like you said, Paul, being a husband, a father, a business owner, trying to do your own training, look after other people as well. You have to be very realistic about, how thinly you choose to spread yourself, and trying to kind of be all things to all men, and have too many, what's the saying? You're ironing too many fires or something like that.
Well, I had that stage recently. I was talking up before we press record that, I'd gone down for 5-day-a-week training, which I've been doing for the last year and 4 or 5 months, down to 3 days a week, because it's not that my brain wanted to do it. My mind was there. I wanted to show up, but I just physically couldn't. And therefore I had to make a change.
This reminds me of what Paul McElroy said back in January, but you're an amazing 12 coach, right? And you said I don't know this for sure, because I'm not an amazing 12 coach, but I think the process is every time you're doing something, and every time you come into the next phase of the program or whatever, is this this person's goal is this. Does this exercise get them to that? If it does, it's in. If it doesn't, it's out. And it's
Yeah.
as simple as that. And this is one of the problems. This is again why we do this podcast, isn't it? To try and get across to you, the lovely listener, who like, you know, what to do, where to start, how to get through all this information and decide what is right for you. It's not what is right and what's wrong, it's what is right for you, because everything's pretty much right, isn't it? Every moving around will get you fitter, and lifting stuff will get you stronger and all of that, but like, it's how you do it. And if you look on YouTube or whatever, there's all these like, do this exercise and do it every day and you'll be this mobile, or do this exercise and do it every day, but you can't do them all every day.
What
So
about you, James?
it's discerning what exercise works for you at that time, and that's why you need to know what you want for that goal. But yeah, James, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I find that I am. I don't know if you guys feel it, but I certainly feel that being a trainer or a coach or a business owner with a certain number of people who I look after and who I suppose you could say look to me or look to us for education, for support, but also I suppose for sort of motivation, for inspiration, and for a role model really for people to kind of like. So I find having that gentle sort of pressure, if you like, helps a lot to keep me keep me in track. I think it's an element of that accountability. There's that you get accountability from many different areas, don't you? You get accountability from those around you, from I also have two training partners who I train with every week, Paul and Guillaume. So I'm accountable to them, and Claire Booth, who does training with me as well. I'm accountable to her. I've got this Strong First course coming up, so you have all these things that kind of drive you forwards. And for me, that's actually quite important because I'm just a very kind of normal person, normal guy. And I'm very busy as well, just like many of our clients are and many of the listeners are. And sometimes if I've got a workout that I'm going to be doing, but I've also got a list of 8 other things that need doing at the same time, it would be quite easy for any of us, and I know it is, to kind of say, well, I'll miss that workout, or I'll put that off till tomorrow or whatever. So I think having that kind of healthy amount of peer pressure around me helps definitely. I'm also very realistic. So I do 3 sort of strength sessions a week. That's it. I don't do any more. I very rarely do any more than that. So I do 3 strength sessions a week. I teach spinning twice a week for cardio. And occasionally I'll do kind of more practice stuff in between clients and things, practicing movements and practicing things, but I wouldn't really class that as a workout. So I keep it very manageable, with, again, being married, having 2 kids, that sort of thing.
One thing I want to ask you, James, is because you're really good at practicing what you preach. You're really good at that because you test stuff out. So you're on a carnivore diet at the minute, right? And you have been for the last 100 days or whatever.
Yeah, I try. I think, I also would. Yeah, one thing I wouldn't do is tell someone to do something that I didn't have kind of personal knowledge of myself. I think because I know that Mark Rifkind, another one of our recent former guests, one of his big things is experience is the best teacher, and you have to know what something feels like, and you have to have experienced it yourself to teach it effectively. And I know I've definitely heard it. I don't know if he said that on the podcast, but he's definitely spoke about that at length before. So for me, I wouldn't try and, you see it all the time, don't you? Trainers trying to teach an exercise to someone, and it's clear that they're not accomplished and comfortable with the exercise themselves, but maybe they've seen it on YouTube or they've picked it up from somewhere and they're trying to pass this on. So I very much would only want to try and get people doing things that I was confident in my ability to coach and I had a deep understanding of. And as well, so the carnivore thing I've been doing for 90 days today, and I'm going to write a kind of in-depth blog probably 100 days, and just about what I've kind of experienced, what I've learned, how I feel, and that sort of thing, and then the lessons that I'm taking forwards from it. So Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's I enjoy trying new things. You know, we do. I've been doing a lot of cold showers for quite a long time as well. I had a nice fresh head shave just before coming on today, and then got under the cold shower afterwards and had a nice cold shower. You know, so no, I really do think, yeah, practice what I preach, but then also try and immerse myself in certain things that then I can pass on the knowledge of my experience to other people. And I think if people, if you're just teaching someone to do something from a textbook, or because you read a blog, or because you watched a video, I think people can sort of see through that quite quickly. For me, it's important that I actually embrace and sort of live the lifestyle that I'm trying to promote others to live. And for me, that's a very realistic lifestyle. It's not you know, I'm not training 7 days a week. I'm not, you know, doing training in the morning, training in the evening, you know, doing, you know, 2 training sessions a day, that sort of thing. I think my training especially is a very, very sustainable, realistic way for many people to train. So yeah.
It's funny because that's reminded me a little bit about what like Dave Whitley, because I missed that one unfortunately because I wasn't very well, which is a nightmare because I'm never ill. And Dave Whitley was on and I wasn't there, and I had loads to ask him as well. But anyway, that's kind of reminds me of what he's like, because he clearly lives what he says, right? And he has done for years. But he's done all the Wim Hof stuff and all of that. But you see, that's not for me. I hate doing that. I'm not, you know, and there's benefits to it, but there's also benefits to doing lots of other things, right? So I do other things in my life. But one of the great things about what he was talking about was, like, you know, the self-talk that you do, and even things that you say that you don't even realize you're saying, that you put yourself down, just in passing. And he'd taken that Napoleon Hill comment and changed it for himself, hadn't he? With like, whatever Dave can,
what Dave can conceive and believe, Dave will achieve. Yeah,
Dave will achieve. Yeah, and he clearly lives by that. And then what he said about his son. So I wanted to talk to him about this because I'd heard him say it before as well about his son, about certain words that he uses and that. And I remember my parents, you know, my mom, I used to say things and I can't do that. My mom would be like, there's no such word as can't. And at the time I thought, oh yeah, you're just being funny. That's quite flippant. But actually that's a massive deal. Because like, if you get into the realm of saying I can't do stuff, you won't. You never will. Whereas if you say I can, or I will, or I'm going to, and like I said earlier, stand by it and do the thing and do what you said you were going to do, then you get there, don't you?
It's the other quote from it's the other quote from the similar time as the as Napoleon Hill was the Henry Ford one. You know, whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. You know.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. But that's one of those things as well, because there's all these memes around and stuff like that, and people put out all these quotes. But you can see from there the rest of the stuff that they put out whether they mean it or not. It's like what you don't even know what that means. It just sounds cool. Whereas actually, if you look behind it and then you say, actually, you're doing exactly what that says. You know. So that's another thing to be careful of and look out for on social media. What's behind those memes?
Or it's the older hashtag be kind, and then 2 weeks later the same person is slagging someone off on social media or something. No,
exactly.
You've got, and again, but this comes back to, I think it was, I mean, lots of our guests have said this to us about actually, you know, embodying the character that you want to be and becoming that character, you know, and at a very deep level, you know, right down in the fibers of your being, you know, not just being a surface level person, but becoming a person who, you know, this is the way I live. This is the way I interact with people. This is the way I train. This is the way I eat. This is the way I think. These are the books I read, you know, and just becoming that person that you want to become. So you're really going into things at a character level rather than a kind of a technique surface level, you know, which I think is incredibly important.
One of those things. I said something the other day and it was like, it's probably been said before. I don't know. I put things out that, you know, it's like what was it Mark Fisher said about quotes, like you said, use it 4 times or something, then it's yours. But it was one of those things, because I was a surface level person. And I was like, I am this person, right? I am this person. So that's just me. And then it's like, no, but you can be somebody else in the future if you want to be. You don't have to be. But if you're unhappy with where you are now for any reason, you can change all that. So I just said, like, the person, do the things that the person who you want to be would do. Because if you don't, you'll never be that person. You can say you want to be that, but if you don't do those things, you're never going to be that, are you? So that's like, that comes full circle to what we've just been saying about practicing what you preach. So, I train outside. I train with kettlebells and maces and clubs, and I have trained with barbells and stuff in the past, and it's not that I don't necessarily like it. I just don't want to go inside and have to do it and at a certain time and all that. It's like, I just like being outside. And a lady walked past this morning when I was outside, and she was like, must take a lot of discipline to do what you're doing. And I'm like, well, yes, it does. And that's fine. It does. That's a good, well done. Well done for saying that, and that's one of the things that Paul just said. You've got to do the things that most people won't do, because it does take a lot of discipline, and that's you have to build that, because I haven't always been disciplined.
Well, the search for entertainment is quite high in society, isn't it? We all want to be entertained. I mean, the thing is, I'm quite entertained by wrist mobility, mainly because my wrists are so stiff and, years of joint problems. It's quite fun to not feel them anymore. But a lot of people are quite willing to put up with it, and that's fine. I mean, they've got other priorities. But I think from my point of view is I quite like to deep dive into things and explore things and integrate them and try and find applications for them. And the good thing about having clients is you've got a series of guinea pigs.
Yeah.
No, but you can try new ideas, and sometimes it's good. And sometimes you'll meet a client and you're like, oh, I don't know how. I don't have a tool for that. Or maybe I need to come at it from a different angle because what I've got at the moment is not working, and that pushes me down an avenue. There's things which I'll deep dive into and try and train for, and there's other things which I'll just listen to other people. And that's what I like about this podcast is I get a chance to. I think a lot of what I'm exploring is just is less about the techniques. It's more about because it's not that I probably have enough techniques to solve most of the things that people need. I'm never going to be a coach for an Olympic athlete. That's not what I do. I don't have the skills of periodization and the seasonality of the sports and stuff like that. But I probably have enough to get amazing results for any of my clients. But often learning how to
stop you there. In Dave Whitley style, you've probably got enough. You've just said, I've probably got enough to get them amazing results. You have got enough to get them amazing results.
Yeah.
You're an amazing 12 coach, right?
That's true, actually.
So it's like what Tracy said, it's not the all right 12. It's not like our 12s, it's the amazing 12. So you've just done exactly what Dave said. So
it's like the Magnificent Seven.
No, but you see how easily it's done, though.
He's just being typically he's just being typically English and.
I was about to say it's a British thing, it's not self-deprecating, but just making everything a bit more subdued. But it's not. You know exactly what you're doing, and you can get amazing results for the people.
But often we don't have necessarily the communication skills, and that's something that I think every client. It's like you'll know that there's a certain cue that will work with some person. And then sometimes you're firing out words, and then it's all of a sudden someone gets the cue that you didn't expect them to have. It could be squeeze the chest up. It could be, hips high, flatten your back. It could be whatever it is, arch your back. You throw these words out there, and all of a sudden you get it. Or someone like Josh Hillish was quite interesting, kind of discussing a lot of these scenarios in this podcast allows us to practice in a good environment. Circumstances in which we encounter all the time and play with the ideas and get an idea of how another experienced coach may answer them. And hopefully what a listener who maybe isn't a coach will get from it is that the fact that they can explore those ideas too.
What Brett said about that was really good when he said, because I do this a lot, and we probably all have, is like, you think everyone wants to be strong, right? Some people aren't strong, they want to be strong because everyone should be, right? As far as I'm concerned, everyone should be, right? But what does it mean to people? If you say to someone, right, I'm going to get you strong, they might run a mile because like you said, they might think of like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like, I don't want to look like that. And it's like, well, no, I didn't say I'm going to get you to look like that. I'm going to get you strong, but that's what conjures up in their mind, and they don't want that. So they'll go and do cardio because they want to be fit and
lean.
Yeah, lean, they want to be toned and all that. And it's like, well, okay, but you can still be strong and that as well. In fact, that's pretty much what strength training does for you, right? So Yeah, the words behind it, even though you can use positive words like strong, it can have a negative connotation in lots of people's minds, because it did with me when I was younger. So it's that was a really interesting. Brett was great with that, actually, with lots, because he's obviously done the psychology behind it. He said, well, he did it at university, didn't he? He did it at college. He did the
But
psychology behind training.
someone like Chris Rember is a good example of kind of. I mean, he was quite, I think, upfront and said, "Look, I just follow my, was it the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plan?"
The ABC7 or something, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
So
Yeah.
I almost got that right. Yeah, it was a mixture of numbers and letters. Yeah, and he basically does variations of that based on whatever that programming language is,
Yep.
and he is consistently basically how he strength trains, and he obviously gets amazing results from it. It's why he has the physique he has, and so I think one of the big challenges is that most of us don't have a concept of time when it comes to change, and we kind of, everything's delivered to us so quickly now. I mean, I was having a conversation with my 5-year-old. I was like, when I was 5, I couldn't just watch the program I wanted to watch. I had to wait for the next week, or my TV was 14 inches tight, and he couldn't get around the fact that I didn't have a phone. So we're so used to things being delivered to us instantly, we don't really have a sense of what our bodies can do and the biology based around it. And I think if anything, we need to simplify things and remove things. And was that in our conversation with Brett? It was in a conversation maybe with Chris or someone. It was about.
I think we've had that conversation with quite a few, haven't we? Around the addition via subtraction. Actually stripping away the sort of superfluous and that sort of thing, and being left with, the meat, if you like, of what you want to do. And not having all this stuff around the edges.
What do we have with?
About meat again? That's 90 days.
Any meat.
Stop talking about meat.
You know what I mean?
Got his meat coat on again. No, but I mean, if I was to ask Peter what his training plan is, I bet he would say it's double kettlebell squats, it's single leg squats, it's presses, it's probably some swings, maybe some pull-ups and press ups or something. And I wouldn't be so. And you've done that for what, 4 or 5 months? And
I've done pretty much exactly the same 3 exercises. It's just changed actually, but since January, exactly the same 3 exercises. So 9 exercises basically. 3 days, across 3 days, twice a week.
Yeah.
For 6 months.
And generally, when I see your videos, James, you're playing with presses, loaded carries, swings.
I think I do less than, certainly in most weeks I'll do less than 10 exercises. Yeah, certainly. And there'll be the same 10 exercises,
Yeah. And you'll find some different expressions for them,
Yeah. And there'll be slight variations, but they're kind of the same things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think there is the variety and the internet and everything like that. You can just go into such an exploration of minute variations of every single modality that there is. And really, I mean, I'm sure you get it with some of your clients. Say, can I do this for the rest of my life? And I'm like, yeah, you could probably just squat and swing and press and do some stretches for the rest of your life. And if you're prepared to do it, I'm quite prepared to do the same workout every day. I mean, I don't care. If it gets me where I want to be, I quite like it. I like the meditation of it,
The problem here is that, and it depends how you say it, but a lot of people will obviously say, well, you need not variety, but you need to change things up for adaptation.
Yeah.
So people think that means, so you need to do like loads and loads and loads of different exercises.
Confusion.
No, you need to change.
Muscle confusion. Yeah.
You need to confuse, you need to shock your body and all that. And it's like, no, you don't. If you shock it, that's a nightmare. What you need to do is gradually persuade it, like Paul McElroy says, gradually persuade your central nervous system that it's okay to do the thing. And you do that by slowly increasing like rep ranges. So doing more, say you're doing squats, instead of doing 5, you do 6, and then increase the number of sets, or increase the weight or whatever. It doesn't mean doing a totally different exercise to keep your body confused and all of that. It just means changing like an adaptation, changing something, but not everything.
Well,
And
so
then,
kind of something adaptation to was it specific adaptation to impose demands, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
my
yeah.
entertainment is going walking,
Mm.
because when I'm out and about, it's either it's raining, it's sunny, it's autumn, so everything's gone, like all the leaves have gone red, or it's like spring and everything's starting to come up, or it's winter and like you can see through the trees and you can see views that you never used to be able to see. That's variety for me. Just going for a walk, and every day it's different.
I like polishing coal. Well, James, do you like the cinema, don't you?
I do like the cinema, yeah. So I go to the cinema. It's not very active, but I go and sit there with a black coffee and put my feet up. And
You're allowed to put your feet up these days.
yeah,
That against the rules.
at my cinema, yeah, not on the seat. There's a
Oh,
special.
right, okay.
I have a sofa, and then in front
Oh.
of you, there's like a ledge that you can put your feet on. It's very
Is
nice.
it you get sent in through the back door because you're like the VIP? Is it like a mafia boss going into a restaurant? You got your own seat.
I did go and watch.
Like sit there.
I did go and watch Fast Furious 9 this week,
Oh wow!
and it can't be recommended. It's quite good fun though, if you're into that sort of thing. But I was going to say about you. We talked about variety there. We were talking about it within training, and a client of mine shared a Tim Ferriss blog with me very recently. Not blog, podcast. Sorry, and I can't remember the name of the guest on there. It was a doctor anyway on there, but he was talking about levers, and I've shared this analogy with quite a few members in the last week or so, and it was really interesting. And it was specifically around diet, but it kind of ties in really well to what Pete was just saying and what you were saying about how to actually create sort of specialized variety or variation within things. So within the food, it was quite interesting because I sat down with four or five members last week or this week who are kind of bigger members who've got some problems around, well, not problems, but challenges with kind of eating and losing weight and emotion and that sort of thing. So we sat down and had a really good chat, and I shared this with them and with other people. And he said, basically, you have three levers in front of you, and I like this as an analogy. And one lever will, and you're always either pulling on one lever or two levers, or sometimes you may pull on three levers. And the first lever is how is the frequency of when you eat. Yeah. So how often you're eating. So if you're eating 3 times a day with 2 snacks in between, if you're eating twice a day, if you're eating once a day, if you're eating 7 times a day, how often you're eating in the frequency. So you can adjust that accordingly. The next lever is what you're eating. So the type of food you're eating, or and you could think about alcohol in here, and you've got a lever. So you kind of open it, you open the floodgates or anything, or you start to restrict things slightly. And then the third one is the quantity that you're eating. So, and you can adjust that from, fully open, anything goes, and you can reduce it down. And what was really interesting was that he said that the majority of people go through their life with all three levers sort of turned off. So you can eat, whenever you want, whatever you want, as much as you want, and then it's up to the individual to kind of take control of which one they want to use, or a combination of those. And it was a really nice sort of little analogy that the guys that I spoke to really kind of liked the sound of, because we've all got people who maybe at the moment drink alcohol, say 7 days a week. I've got people who come to me and they're drinking, half a bottle of wine every night, and then if they slowly bring it down and say, well, okay, so I'm going to pull on this first lever and I'm just going to have, alcohol on a Friday and a Saturday. So they're kind of doing the frequency and controlling the middle one a little bit. And I'm just going to have no more than 3 glasses. So you're controlling that one as well. So I thought that was really nice. And it kind of ties in with what you're saying, Pete, around, you can control the number of repetitions per sets, the number of sets, the amount of load, the amount of rest time, the frequency of sessions, so you can have more rest in between sessions or less rest in between sessions.
But it's a self-awareness, isn't it? I mean, I think one of the big things I'm noticing is that our perception of what is actually happening can often be quite clouded. And I think that's why we probably all work with a coach, is because we've realized that in certain areas of our life, whether it's our business, we have business coaches, or we have managers who help us marketing, or we have coaches who help us in terms of our physical goals, that we're not always judging what we're doing correctly. And I think I see that a lot with clients, is that around food, the concept of what is actually abnormal or restrictive, or what hunger looks like, is completely skewed. And I think learning that discipline is quite a challenge, I'd say.
It's really scary, because when I used to work in an office, it was a big open plan office, hundreds of people, always someone's birthday, always, right? And if it was your birthday, you went down the shops and you bought cakes, right? So inevitably people would be like, well, I don't want to buy a big cake, so I'll get a load of like little brownies. You know, you get the little tubs of them, little brownies, little flapjacks, little this, little that, right? You have one and you're like, well, it was only little, so I'll have another one and another one. And you end up eating loads of them. And honestly, every single day I was eating lots of these things.
I used to work in an office that published the British Bake Off books. Around the summer, there was a Bake Off every day.
When it's there, you'll have it, right? So people have like snacks in their cupboard, and they'll just be like, yeah, but it's there, but I'll keep it in the cupboard just in case I fancy a little bit. And it's like, you know, it's there.
Yeah.
So the
easiest people have birthdays,
or to not get tempted by it is to not have it there. And people say, oh, but I've got kids and all that. And it's like, that's fine, but you don't need to buy, you know, you don't need to go and buy like a whole shelf full of stuff because you've got kids, you know, and kids will learn as well. They do, you know, they do want stuff like that, but they'll learn, you know, through repetition. But so the way I manage that, I don't have any snacks and stuff lying around, or if I do, I make sure I buy stuff. I'm like, I'm going to have a snack today, but I'm going to eat a lot, because then it's not there, and I've allowed for that today. So the way I do it is the like Brad was talking about, 2 meals a day, because my portion control for me is a nightmare. I like to just eat loads. So I have a massive breakfast.
But you train a lot, though.
Yeah, no, not really. Not really, but I have a massive breakfast at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I have a massive dinner at like 7 o'clock in the evening, and that's it.
But you walk around a lot. You got high, neat.
Well, yeah.
You do your 10 miles a day, don't you, as well? 10
I think what you think is not that much is quite a lot for other people.
True. However, if I wasn't doing all that, I would eat smaller meals because I wouldn't need it. But I'd still only probably have 2 a day.
So
lots of people eat lunch just because it's lunchtime. They're not necessarily hungry. They just have it just because it's time to go to lunch.
So with no snacks being in the house, you're not very popular at Halloween.
I'm just not very popular in general.
My wife's a dentist, and she once gave out free toothpaste for the sweets. No one comes round anymore. Quite convenient.
I saw a thing about dentists with, I think it was on the Viz, how, like, you know, you get the toothpaste, like 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste. It's like, well, that's the last toothpaste you want to buy, because the dentist's model is to get you in with bad teeth. So you want to go with the opposite.
Deary me. Guys, it's been really good having this catch up with you. And I think...
You're trying to get out of this.
What's that?
You're trying to leave. He's trying to get
It's like,
pretty good. I'll see you later, guys.
Yeah. I saw this thing on Facebook yesterday, I think it was. You know, you get these party banners, these party buntings or whatever that people put up in their house.
Yeah.
And you get the ones that have got like a chain and then a separate individual letters along it to read, you know, to say congratulations or happy birthday or whatever. Yeah. And there's one that had on there, leave by 9, or please leave by 9. Anyway, no, I was going to say it's, I think we'll definitely, I mean, we said that we'd try and do one of these every sort of 3 or 4 weeks, and we went back, didn't we? We just had a little count back, and I think we've done 6 guests sort of on the spin, you know, so we've done this today, which is great. And I think it's nice to catch up and to go over some of the things that have been brought up by guests and any questions that people have, which is great. So Next week, we have Franz Schneidman coming on, I should say, from San Diego. So we're going to do that one, which will be fantastic. And then we're lining up more guests ahead of that as well. Please make sure to like, to subscribe to the podcast. If you have the capacity to leave a review as well. And please share with anyone who you think this information might be useful for. And we also have our Facebook group, which there will be a link to underneath this podcast, wherever you watch it or listen to it. But I think you can just go on Facebook and search for the Health Oddity group. Yeah. You can just go on. Sorry.
What I would say as well is for these episodes that we're doing here, we're kind of trying to address, any I keep forgetting the word. It's not discrepancies. What's it called? Contradictions between things guests have said in the past, like different things guests have said in the past, and some might contradict each other and stuff like that. And that raises questions. Okay, it certainly raises questions within our minds, which is why we're starting to do these ones as well with just the three of us. With you and I and him, because it raises those questions. And if we've got those questions, you, the lovely listener, is going to have those questions as well. And if you have got those questions, the Facebook group is the perfect place to ask. Because we will ask them as well, or we'll either ask them or we'll try to answer them ourselves on these, or we'll get the guests to answer them when they come on. Or give us.
I know we've already got a couple of former guests in the group, haven't we? We've got We've got Jim Hatcher in there. We've got Chris Denning in the group as well. So yeah, you can interact with people in there and ask questions and things as well, which would be great. Mr. Paul Bassett, do you have a final thought today?
I'd love to meet these lovely listeners. I've got visions of a bearded man with golden hair. I don't know why. That's what. Maybe that's not demographic.
There's bound to be one of them out there, a guy with a lovely mane, just going.
Got a huge mane and lipstick on.
Yeah, not Lee Collins though.
Yes, exactly. That's a local joke.
It is, yeah. He's from around here.
So I've lost my train of thought. No, it's just good to have the catch up, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's excellent. It's excellent. So we will see you all next week for episode 47 with Franz Schneidman. Schneidman sounds like Spider-Man. Sorry,
sounds like a superhero.
Franz Schneidman, I think. Okay, we will see you next week for that one. Have a fantastic week, guys. Try and get into the Facebook group if you'd like to interact with us more. Ask us any questions you'd like us to ask future guests and you'd like us to kind of discuss on the next one of these that we do, which will be in a few weeks' time. And like Mr. Peter Lant always says, thank you all. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate you. We're coming up, actually. We're going to be closing in on a year soon. Episode 52 will be our 1 year anniversary. So we'll do something special for that one. Maybe we'll all dress up. I don't know.
There's silence.
I'm being met by blank faces. Okay.
I mean, I'm dressed up anyway. I mean, I think I've got the t-shirt.
Well, yeah. Paul is wearing his Health Oddity t-shirt. I'm wearing my Health Oddity hoodie.
Available to buy in all good stores.
It this morning. I did my session in it this morning, so it's a bit pongy. Sorry.
Okay. Good.
You can't smell it on Zoom, though.
Well, yeah, I know, but no integrity, mate. I've had a shower and everything.
Right, guys, we will see you next week with Franz for episode 47. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.